Hey guys, it's Jane, and I am here today to do a very exciting thing. I am starting my 2015 wrap-up, and I'm going to do that by giving you some of my favourite reads of the year. I've run through my list of what I've read for the whole year. I've got a couple more than 150 titles at this point, so it took a little bit of time to dredge through and have a think. But I've chosen some favourites. I've decided that there's probably too many to put in one video. Tomorrow I'm going to come back and tell you all about my science fiction favourite reads for the year. I don't just read science fiction by any means, but I probably read more science fiction than any other single genre. It's also my favourite genre, and also I've just had a stonking great year for science fiction and I have lots of favourites. But today I'm going to do 7 books that were favourite reads for the year that are not science fiction. So here goes. The first category I have to talk about today is my favourite comic. For this year, my favourite is The Thrilling Adventures of Lovelace and Babbage by Sydney Padua, who's both the writer and the illustrator. I wish I had a copy of this to show you, but I actually got this from the library, and I've been thinking about buying myself my own personal copy, but I haven't got around to it. This is a really interesting work which starts off, the first sort of section of it is just a straight historical retelling of the story of Lovelace, Ada Lovelace and Charles Babbage, who were instrumental in the very early days of computer science. She then lets her imagination go wild and imagines a couple of things work just slightly differently and creates this whole other alt history of Lovelace and Babbage and their calculating engine. A really interesting read, lots of fun. So that is my favourite comic for the year. The second category is my favourite classic for the year. The favourite classic that I read in 2015 was The Brothers Karamazov by Fyodor Dostoyevsky. I've actually done a whole review of this book, and so I'll link that in the description below. It's one of my longer, more in-depth reviews that I did back before I got pregnant and my brain broke. So I actually have something vaguely interesting to say. So if you're interested, you can have a look back at that. It's a total Russian classic, and so probably everybody's heard of it. Before I move on, I'll just say that I tried for years to read the P&V translation, which I'd bought ages ago. I actually succeeded finishing it this year in a different translation. I read the Ignat Avsey translation. For some people, the translation probably doesn't make any difference. For me, it made a huge difference, and I really enjoyed the Ignat Avsey translation, which I got a hold of through the Oxford World Classics series, which is actually a pretty good series if you're looking at classics. They've got detailed introductions and notes, and lots of them are good translations. They don't have the world's prettiest covers, but what's inside the books is really good. Okay, the third one. This one I actually do have a physical copy of. My favourite kids lit book for the year is this one, Greenglass House by Kate Milford. So this is not a short picture book, although it does have a few illustrations. The chapter headings have illustrations, and it's got a gorgeous cover. It's probably aimed at 9 to 12-year-olds, so it's truly not YA. It's kids lit. It's a stonking great read. It's a mystery set at Christmas time, so it's very seasonally appropriate. And it's what goes on in this old smuggler's inn over one Christmas. It's, yeah, a really fun read. I borrowed it from the library and really loved it, and I bought a copy for my son for Christmas, which is why I've got one here to wave at you to show you. Okay, category number 4, my favourite guilty pleasure. Now, I That's the best version of a category name that I could come up with. And what I was thinking of is when I was younger, when I was like a teenager, young teenager, there were those great big chunker paperbacks with the slip covers and the foil titles that, you know, weren't really proper reading, like Jackie Collins's and things like that. There's stories about, you know, people with too much money, not particularly good manners, basically, who are getting up to no good, and it's every so often it's just a bit entertaining to read about this. And this year I actually came across a version of that was very enjoyable, and this is Crazy Rich Asians by Kevin Kwan. Also read the follow-up, which was called China Rich Girlfriend, which is also enjoyable. But yes, Crazy Rich Asians, there is no comma in that. It's Crazy Rich. If anything, there'd be a hyphen. Crazy Rich Asians is the story of what happens when the favourite son of an uber-rich Singaporean family who has been living in America brings his American-born Chinese girlfriend home to meet the family. And yeah, hijinks ensue. It's just a really, really fun read. Guilty pleasure. Okay, my favourite historical fiction book for the year. This one goes to Hild by Nicola Griffith. This is set in England, Northern England, in the Dark Ages. Are you allowed to even say that? And it's about a girl who is part of a minor royal family, and it's about her life growing up, and it starts as a very young girl and it ends on her wedding night when she's still relatively young. And it's a whole bunch of stuff that's going on. It's got court intrigue and drama and you know, fighting in a very kind of fantasy-esque, you know, swords and horses and sort of way, but it's actually all historical sort of detail based on reality. The title character, Hild, is actually the woman who grew up to be St. Hilda. And there's interesting stuff about worldview and religion. It's the time when Christianity was becoming established in the British Isles, and that's part of the politics that's going on. This is a fascinating story. Nicola Griffith is actually in the process of writing a second volume that follows up Hild's life, which I'm really looking forward to. But yes, Hild is, even without a further volume, is a fantastic, fantastic read. Okay, now we're getting into the big ones. The second last category I'm going to tell you about today is crime fiction. My favourite crime fiction novel of the year. This one was very difficult to choose. I read a fair amount of crime fiction, not quite as much as science fiction, but still a fair amount, and I've read some good ones this year. But my very favourite crime novel of the year is Pleasantville by Attica Locke. This is set in the 80s, I think, the 80s or the 90s in Chicago. It's about a mayoral political election and a whole bunch of bad stuff that's going on behind the scenes there. It was a fascinating, fascinating read. Pleasantville by Attica Locke. And the final category that I have to tell you about today is my favourite fantasy novel of the year. Even though I read a fair amount of fantasy, this turned out to be a bit of a no-brainer. My favourite fantasy book this year was Robin Hobb's Fool's Quest, which is part of her Fitz and the Fool trilogy, which again is part of her ongoing Farseer cycle. The only bad thing about this is that you really can't start at Fitz and the Fool. You really do need to start back at the beginning of the Farseer cycle. The first one is called Assassin's Apprentice, which is a fair number of books back. That is the only bad thing about this book, because I want to go out to tell everybody to read this book, but actually you've got to read a few things first. Robin Hobb is just getting better and better and better, and even her first books were pretty good. So I'm very excited that there's a final volume of this trilogy, hopefully out next year. That is going to be super duper exciting. So that's it for me for today. That's 7 of my favourite books for the year. But what about you? What's your favourite kids' lit book for the year, or your favourite guilty pleasure, or your favourite crime novel of the year? I would love to hear. Why don't you light up the comments below, and don't forget to come back tomorrow and hear about my favourite science fiction reads for 2015. Okay, I hope you're all well, and I'll talk to you later. Bye!